Welcome to the Nation of History channel. Be sure to subscribe and like so you don't miss out on more videos like this one. Enslaved people appear gathered below the deck of a vessel during an Atlantic crossing. The scene shows the harshness of the transatlantic trade that transported millions of Africans to the Americas up to the 19th century. Cramped space and restraint mechanisms were systematic control methods used by colonial powers. Gordon shows visible marks on his back in an 1863 portrait after leaving a plantation in Louisiana. The image became one of the best-known visual records in American history and was used by the abolitionist movement to expose the brutality of slavery. The photo's reach helped mobilize support during the Civil War. Men appear crowded into a very limited space at Mala Prison in Malawi around 1900 in a setting that recalls confinement on transatlantic vessels from earlier centuries. The image exposes loss of dignity and harsh conditions imposed on inmates in the region's prison system. A child holds a heavy hoe while working dry plantation soil in the southern United States during slavery. Nearby, a mother offers water to small children under the scorching sun, illustrating rural families fighting to survive in a setting of deep deprivation. Three youths appear linked by chains in a late 19th century record from East Africa. The photograph documents human trafficking opposed by missions in Zanzibar and nearby areas in 1890. The use of metal restraints was a common practice during transport. Daily life in labor camps in the United States in 1930 was shaped by strict disciplinary measures. The image records a man restrained in an institution in Georgia, showing the legacy of a system of social and labor exploitation. Enslaved men appear linked by chains under a guard in a tropical forest region. Iron links connect the group, showing strict control during transport to markets or plantations. The scene documents the loss of freedom imposed by the transatlantic trade. Workers appear in a sugarcane field in Jamaica in the period after abolition, showing the continued labor inequality on plantations. The image records descendants of formerly enslaved people facing long days and low pay in an agricultural sector dependent on black labor. A crowd of men in formal clothing watches a public auction in Cheapside, Lexington, Kentucky, around 1840. The organizer stands on a raised spot to direct bids in the state's largest site for this kind of activity, revealing the cold logistics that supported the regional economy in the 19th century. A black woman carries a white child on her back in Salvador around 1860. The record reveals tense household dynamics in the empire, where women workers were assigned to full-time care of their enslavers' children. The scene reflects Bahia's 19th century social structure. Incarcerated workers appear under armed watch in the 19th century United States. The convict leasing system allowed private companies to use this labor on public works and railroads. Striped uniforms were the common visual standard of prisons. Enslaved workers handle coffee beans in a drying yard in the Vale do Paraíba in 1882. The farm activity was the economic base of the Empire of Brazil, sustained by forced labor until the end of that decade. The scene exposes the productive organization of large coffee estates. Manual laborers work on railroad and farm job sites under the supervision of armed guards in the southern United States. The leasing system allowed the state to transfer people in custody to the private sector. These work crews were essential to infrastructure in the late 19th century. Social organization in Liberia during the 1930s faced major structural challenges tied to using labor to transport goods. The porter system was essential for local logistics in a period marked by intense international pressure. Groups of men under state control appear in digging areas and shared living quarters in the early 20th century. The system in place allowed labor to be used on infrastructure such as railroad construction. These forced work practices were central to the economy in many southern regions. African American workers labored on Birmingham's urban infrastructure on July 19, 1909. Using groups of people in custody on public works met the demand for low-cost labor during industrialization, reflecting the continuation of unequal systems well into the 20th century. The Price, Birch and Company establishment in Alexandria displayed a sign identifying the headquarters of a profitable human trafficking business in Virginia. In 1862, the building was guarded by uniformed soldiers while the Southern economy depended on these large-scale transactions. Workers in custody were transported in special rail cars to infrastructure work sites, including street and railroad construction. Many of these men were African American and faced harsh conditions, forming a base for urban development under tight institutional control. Entire families worked on the vast cotton plantations of the southern United States in the 19th century. The routine involved adults and children under harsh conditions, while groups of prisoners in striped uniforms were used in similar farm tasks, keeping the productive system running. Children appeared doing field work on a sugarcane plantation in Louisiana around 1885. Even after slavery ended, many African American families faced continued coerced labor under harsh conditions, where childhood was often subordinated to farm production. The first photographs taken inside a gold mine in Minas Gerais in 1888 reveal the unhealthy environment faced by miners. Mineral extraction was central to the country's economy, operating under heavy surveillance and intense exploitation systems. A group stands outside the Florida Club in St. Augustine, Florida. The image reveals tensions of racial segregation, where people in bondage were kept under the control of the ruling class. This forced coexistence shows the unequal structure that defined social dynamics of the time. Abache and Cudjoe Kazula Lewis appear as survivors of the last human trafficking ship to arrive in the United States in 1860. Brought illegally to Alabama, Cudjoe became a leader in Africatown, symbolizing resistance and the preservation of memory for people harmed by this transatlantic system. Coffee production in Sao Paulo around 1882 depended heavily on enslaved labor. This activity was the country's economic engine in the 19th century and remained a structural foundation until the Lei Áurea was signed on May 13, 1888. Coffee harvests in Rio de Janeiro around 1882 mobilized large groups of workers under a strict system with no rewards. On these plantations, daily life fostered a strong sense of community, where the pursuit of freedom became the main pillar of resistance. Alexander Knox's plantations near Charleston recorded the steady flow of men, women, and children in cotton harvest work in 1865. Cotton was the backbone of the southern United States economy, feeding the global textile industry through an extremely unequal labor system. Workers gather around an animal-drawn wagon at Casina Point Plantation on Edisto Island, South Carolina, around 1862. James Hopkinson's documentary record shows the start of exhausting days in open fields, where routine was marked by little rest and by maintaining the southern farm economic structure. Women, men, and children worked in hand-picked cotton harvests across vast farm fields in the southern United States. This exhausting work was the foundation of the regional economy, keeping whole families in hard labor routines as heavy baskets were filled every day to support global export. A long line of workers crosses plantation land, carrying cotton bales on their heads. The photograph documents farm routine in Georgia during the 1860s. The collective physical effort in these fields supported the Southern textile economy for decades. Rural workers worked the soil on a sweet potato plantation in South Carolina around 1862, showing the base of the Southern farm economy. Animal traction and hand tools used under harsh conditions reflect the dynamics of large estates supporting large-scale production. Workers carry out hand cultivation on a vast tobacco plantation in Tennessee in 1880, showing the scale of farm production at Wessington Plantation. Open field labor under harsh conditions highlights regional economic dependence on profitable commodities and human physical effort. Workers appear amid efforts to drain rice fields at Mulberry Plantation in South Carolina. The work was vital to the Southern economy, demanding labor in flooded ground under heavy pressure. Technical mastery of rice cultivation shaped the region's history and productive base. African American workers handle hand tools while growing rice in South Carolina around 1904. This farm work was a key economic pillar for trade and local supply, and was carried out under difficult conditions by descendants of people who had been enslaved. A wet nurse was photographed in Bahia in 1870 while holding her owner's child. The record exposes complex household dynamics of the time when black women were tasked with caring for white children while facing the harsh reality of servitude. 3 women pose for portraits in Salvador in 1870 while serving in urban households. Responsible for maintaining the home and caring for children, they lived under constant supervision by owners. The record shows the complexity of domestic relationships in 19th century Bahia. Black men wait beside a street-carrying chair in Salvador in 1860. Carrying members of Bahia's elite by porters was a common practice that symbolized status and social power in the imperial period. The record details deep inequality and a rigid hierarchy shaping everyday urban life in Brazil. Sketches dated 1835 depict Africans in forced tasks such as carrying water and bundles on their heads in urban centers. These illustrations detail the exhausting routine imposed on them, with their strength exploited in work essential to keeping cities supplied. Illustrations record the transportation system in Madagascar in the 19th century, where workers were forced into servitude to carry members of the local elite. This travel method shows the social structures in place and exploitation in former colonies. Porters carry a passenger in a palanquin through the streets of colonial India, highlighting social hierarchy and traditional travel methods in the late 19th century. These wooden structures were essential in areas where roads could not handle larger wheeled vehicles at the time. A photograph made around 1935 in Saudi Arabia shows a Bedouin man from the region's nomadic groups. The image documents a historical period when human trafficking still persisted in parts of the Arab world, forcing people into compulsory labor in many areas of that society. A lithograph produced by Thierry Frères in 1839 depicts a clergyman presiding over the marriage of 2 enslaved people in a wealthy home in Brazil. The visual record shows the complexity of social relations at the time, when religious rituals were permitted under the surveillance and control of owners. A 19th century engraving shows the anxious waiting of African American men, women, and children for the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation. The record symbolizes the historical turning point toward freedom in the United States as the nation prepared to end slavery. The famous Thomas Nast engraving was published in Harper's Weekly in January 1863 in the midst of the Civil War. The work aimed to influence public opinion about the new status of newly freed people, portraying the transition into a new social stage in the country. The group of men posing for a photograph in 1859 was responsible for freeing John Doe from detention in St. Joseph, Missouri. The bold act symbolizes active resistance against the system in the United States, where ordinary people risk their own safety to confront racial injustice. Harriet Tubman appears alongside a group of people she helped in the search for freedom during the American Civil War. Known by the nickname Moses, she became a central figure in the Underground Railroad, leading many rescues and dedicating her life to the lasting achievement of civil rights. The United States Navy recruited thousands of African Americans to serve aboard ships such as the USS Vermont during the Civil War. These men performed vital roles as sailors and support crews, using military service as a path toward freedom. In Louisiana, the emancipation movement gained strength through Colonel George H. Banks's actions in December 1863. During the Civil War, many people sought freedom by joining Union forces, facing a future full of new challenges and uncertainties during Reconstruction. During the United States Civil War, a group of freed African Americans was recorded on a dock after federal troops arrived. This transition moment shows the search for autonomy and new work opportunities, highlighting active struggle for freedom and social reorganization amid conflict. Soldiers and freed people rest in front of a small wooden building in Beaufort, South Carolina. The record dates to 1862 during Union occupation in the Civil War. The town became an important refuge for people seeking protection from Northern forces early in the conflict. An ox-drawn wagon crosses a stream as riders watch the route during the American Civil War in 1864. Transportation logistics were vital for moving supplies and families through conflict zones, revealing the harsh reality of rural routes in that century. Black and white workers gather on the Alexandria waterfront during the American Civil War. The image captures port life in Virginia under Union control in 1864. Hands-on cooperation was vital for troop supplies and naval logistics in that area. After a rural property was occupied by federal troops during the Civil War, a group of freed people began harvesting and processing cotton for their own benefit. The image captures this transition on the former Thomas Drayton plantation, symbolizing an early exercise of economic autonomy and resistance. The Freedmen's Bureau established schools in Beaufort, South Carolina, to provide education to formerly enslaved people soon after the Civil War ended. These education centers became foundational pillars for empowerment and for pursuing civil rights in a society undergoing Reconstruction. Booker T. Washington appears in portraits dated 1887, when he was becoming a leading voice in civil rights advocacy. Founder of the Tuskegee Institute, he used education and self-determination to promote social progress for Black people despite barriers imposed by segregation. Robert de Baptiste is identified as an important figure in resistance against racial oppression in the United States in the late 19th century. His engravings illustrate a period when Black leaders organized groups seeking social justice and equal rights for their community. The engraving of Newell Houston Ensley records his importance as an intellectual and educator in the period after slavery ended in the United States. The visual document reflects the engagement of Black leaders in promoting education and seeking effective political participation within a rebuilt American society. A photograph made in 1895 shows the daily life of a family group under the caption claiming they were generations of Ham. The record reflects interpretations of religious texts that were manipulated to reinforce social divisions and hierarchies in the 19th century United States context. A marriage certificate issued on July 9, 1874, formalizes the union of Augustus Johnson and Melinda Murphy through tintype portraits. This document symbolizes the gain of basic civil rights and the building of independent family households after the end of the American Civil War. The tintype portrait of James Washington, produced in the late 19th century, is an example of how this popular method documented the identity of everyday people. The image reflects the post-abolition era, showing the search for representation and citizenship amid the inequalities of the time. African American residents appear in front of wooden buildings in the Nicodemus settlement in Kansas in the late 19th century. This Midwestern community became a refuge for formerly enslaved people seeking autonomy and new opportunities in the post-abolition era. An African American mother poses with her children on the grounds of the Flanagan property in 1954 in Nashville, Tennessee. The scene portrays family life and a search for dignity in a society still ruled by segregation laws, where building community was a form of resistance and a way to keep traditions alive. Ambrose Douglas, an African-American man who lived under slavery, was recorded with part of his large family at the Lewis resin plantation around 1939. The image captured in Brooksville, Florida, illustrates resilience and the rebuilding of black family structures after the abolition era. The portrait of Mark Thrash, a resident of Chickamauga Park, Tennessee, was taken in 1939 to document his longevity. Born under slavery on December 25, 1820, he was 118 years old at the time of the record, serving as a living link to memories of parents who came directly from Africa. Homes in Chatham County were recorded in 1934, revealing the setting where families in bondage built support ties. Even under heavy social pressure, these groups preserved their humanity and created resilient communities in their living spaces. On Sapelo Island around 1925, women used a mortar and pestle to process rice, repeating the motions of their ancestors. This practice is part of Geechee culture, which preserved West African traditions through knowledge and techniques passed down across many generations. Lucindy Lawrence Jordan was recorded in Alabama at 79 years old in 1936. She took part in the Federal Writers Project interviews, which documented accounts from formerly enslaved people to preserve the memory of their resilient life stories. A vast crowd gathered in Rio de Janeiro on May 13, 1888, to celebrate the signing of the Lei Áurea. The record, part of the Gilberto Ferrez collection, preserves the formal end of slavery in Brazil, closing centuries of exploitation and changing the lives of millions. In the Vale do Paraíba, around 1885, workers were recorded as they set out for the coffee harvest in ox carts. Growing coffee was the engine of Brazil's economy, sustained by the exhausting labor of enslaved people through long workdays. Black workers were recorded performing the candigo in 1893, keeping ancestral traditions alive in Brazil. The dance represented a vital form of cultural resistance and identity affirmation, preserving African roots even under deep oppression. Capoeira emerged in Brazil as a resistance strategy that blended cultural expression with self-defense movement. Under the cover of a dance, practitioners preserved identity in an adverse environment, turning the art into a powerful symbol of freedom. Colonial kitchens in the 19th century were places of non-stop work for women and children who carried out vital household tasks such as churning butter. These unseen duties kept owners' households running, showing the harsh working conditions under a domestic roof. The magnolia on the Ashley Gardens in Charleston displayed natural beauty maintained by workers around 1900. Many were descendants of people exploited on the same land, facing racial segregation while keeping these large properties maintained. A family in Fredericksburg, Virginia poses in front of an improvised home around 1862. Even after gaining freedom, many African Americans faced extreme poverty and lack of basic resources, struggling to rebuild their lives in a nation still marked by inequality. Wooden cabins on Cockspur Island, Georgia, served as simple housing for multiple family groups living under exploitation. Overcrowding and harsh conditions made daily life a constant challenge, showing the hard reality faced by these communities. Women and children stand in front of simple homes in the southern United States in the 19th century, showing a search for literacy amid severe social restrictions. Reading a book to the group highlights the role of informal education as a way to preserve human dignity. A family stands in front of their home on Fort George Island, Florida in the mid-1875 period, illustrating living conditions on large rural properties. The Kingsley Plantation record reveals social organization around vast productive land that depended on exhausting labor systems. Workers gather at the end of the day among rural homes in South Carolina in 1860, where children rest on the ground while adults organize tools and livestock. The layout of wooden houses and the handling of the wagon show exhausting routine and the spatial organization typical of large southern farm estates. A large family remains gathered at the entrance of a wooden building on Dr. William Gaines's farm in Hanover County, Virginia in 1862. The documentary record captures multiple generations living together in daily life, shaped by severe restrictions and a constant effort to preserve family bonds amid the hardships of the rural system of the time. Photographs taken in 1904 capture daily life in the Gullah Geechee community in Georgetown, South Carolina. Heirs to ancestral knowledge, these groups kept African culture alive through rice growing and fishing, preserving unique dialects and traditions in the region. A large crowd gathers in a public space, showing the organization and collective strength of the African American community during a period of intense social mobilization. The record highlights the importance of community gatherings in building support networks and fighting for civil rights in the face of the era's challenges. Rural workers pose in the middle of a dense sugarcane field under tropical sun. The historical record reflects agricultural working conditions in the Caribbean or Latin America in the late 19th century. Sugar production demanded intense labor for cutting and carrying stalks by hand. A family poses in front of a rural wooden home with a stone chimney in the southern United States around 1900. The group's arrangement around a central female figure reflects the structure of farming communities that persisted after Reconstruction, keeping traditions alive. During the 19th century, many women and children of Chinese origin were subjected to harsh working conditions in many parts of the world. Documentary records from that period reveal an unequal system in sectors like agriculture and industry that severely limited their rights and opportunities. Tony Thompson was born into servitude and spent his early years on a plantation in Greene County, Georgia. His life story represents the historical transition experienced by many African Americans who, after gaining legal freedom, still faced barriers imposed by racial segregation. Isaac and Rosa pose in New Orleans in 1863 amid the American Civil War. The photograph records the harsh reality of young people trapped by the southern United States slave system. Such records were used to raise public awareness about the lack of freedom. Street vendors sell food on the streets of Rio de Janeiro in 1875. Known as wage-earning workers, These women moved through the city to bring in income that was shared with their owners. The image details relative autonomy alongside strong economic dependence in the imperial period. If you enjoyed this video and want to support the channel, please use the Super Thanks tool below. Your contribution helps us keep bringing you amazing historical content. Thank you so much for your support, and see you in the next video.